The symbolism of the shield, Nordic cross, and the Constellation Scutum. It is the Middle Ages, and the mysteries are still being celebrated. The Roman Empire has reached its greatest extent, spreading from Hadrian's Wall to the west, through into Mesopotamia and Babylonia. But the lands to the north, those of the Frisiae, Anglii and Saxones, Teutones, Suinones, and Citones, remain unconquered, Norse lands. In 9 AD, the Germanic leader, Arminius, shown here, organised a series of ambushes on a column of 3 Roman legions, headed by Publius Quinctilius Varus. Roman sources indicate that over the course of 4 days, Arminius destroyed all 3 legions and ultimately prevented Rome from subjugating Germania. The Nordic races remained Norse. The Roman Empire's transition to Christianity. During the reign of the Roman Emperor Constantine the Great, 306 to 337 AD, Christianity became a recognized religion. Constantine was born in Serbia. His father was Roman, his mother a Greek Christian. He became a Christian in 312. In 313, Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, decriminalizing Christian worship. After this, Christianity spread into Asia Minor until eventually Jerusalem itself was within the Byzantine Empire, and the beautiful Hagia Sophia Cathedral was built in Constantinople, designed by Greek architects. It was the largest cathedral in the world for nearly 1,000 years. The Byzantine Empire was oriented towards Greek rather than Latin culture and characterized by Eastern Orthodox Christianity instead of Roman Catholicism. The Merovingians. The Merovingian dynasty was the ruling family of the Franks from the middle of the 5th century until 751. They continued with their pagan beliefs and see the symbolism of rivers and streams, the chalice, the cup and the Holy Grail. And this is bee jewellery from the tomb of Childeric I in Tournai. See our video, The Symbolism of Bees, Beehives and Honey. And they kept their hair long. See our video, The Symbolism of Hair. By 509, they had united all the Franks and northern Gaulish Romans under their rule. They conquered most of Gaul, defeating the Visigoths in 507 and the Burgundians 534, and also extended their rule into Rhaetia from 537. In Germania, the Alemanni and Barbarii accepted their lordship. But in 594, their king, Clovis I, was baptized, and this ivory book cover shows the baptism of Clovis by Remy of Reims. Why? Clotilda, 474 to 545, his second wife, persuaded him. the rise of Islam and the Barbary pirates. The expansion of Islam under Muhammad can be seen in this map. Most of the Arabian Peninsula was captured by his armies from about 622 to 632 AD. Extensive gains were then made under the Rashidun Caliphate from 632 to 661 AD. Even greater gains were made by the Umayyad Caliphate from 661 to 750 AD, and southern Spain fell, as did a part of southern France. And with the spread of Islam came the rise of the Barbary pirates. The Barbary pirates were Muslim pirates and privateers who operated from North Africa, modern-day Morocco, Algiers and Tunisia, Egypt and Libya. They traded in slaves and operated an extensive network within Africa, see the black lines for the routes, obtaining slaves for the Islamic countries. There were major markets for both men and women in Timbuktu, which is in present-day Mali, and Zanzibar, found off the east coast of Tanzania in Africa. But their predation extended throughout the Mediterranean and south along West Africa's Atlantic seaboard. Here, Christian prisoners are being sold as slaves in a square in Algiers, drawing Jan Lucan, 1684. They seized merchant ships and engaged in raids on European coastal towns and villages in Italy, France, Spain and Portugal, as far as the British Isles and Ireland. Maybe modern Turks ought to wonder why they have a genetic trait that is actually Irish: pale skin and red hair, and blue eyes that are genetically from the realm of the Norse, and green eyes where one might have expected brown. Your genetic heritage shows how your ancestors were treated. On some occasions, settlements such as Baltimore in Ireland were entirely abandoned following a raid, only being resettled many years later. This painting is called Inspecting New Arrivals and is by Giulio Rosati, and this a drawing of a slave market in Cairo by David Roberts, done from life in about 1850. Slavery had been abolished in the UK and its colonies by this date. Slaves were used in harems as concubines, as labourers and as galley slaves. Piracy started soon after the Muslim conquest of the Iberian Peninsula in the 710s, and the trade is still in operation. This is a photo. Thousands and thousands of merchant ships were captured, plundered, their crew enslaved, and the ships sunk. Eventually the Mediterranean Sea became a lawless battlefield. But although the seas were lawless, the land fared better with the rise of R.LUM.R. Charlemagne. Charles the Great, 747 to 814, was king of the Franks from 768. He supported the papacy, and the papacy supported him as he gradually became its sole defender against the Muslim incursions in Spain and France. He removed the Lombards from power in northern Italy and became king of the Lombards in 774. he led an incursion into Muslim Spain. He campaigned against the Saxons, Christianizing them upon penalty of death, and Frisia succumbed in 734, Bavaria in 788, and Carinthia in 788. And thus Charlemagne succeeded in uniting the majority of Western and Central Europe in an area known as the Carolingian Empire. As a reward for defending the Holy Roman Empire, he was crowned Emperor of the Romans by Pope Leo III on Christmas Day 800 at Old St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. But notice that Scandinavia as a whole, Brittany, the UK and most of the Slavs, Serbs, Czechs, Croats, Serbs and so on, were not part of this empire. Indeed, much of the British Isles was pagan and operating under Danelaw, with its centre as York, or Jorvik. From 1016 to 1035, Canute even ruled over a unified English kingdom as part of his North Sea Empire, together with Denmark, Norway and part of Sweden. Books say he was Christian, but was he? It's hard to decide if Canute's devotion to the church came out of deep religious devotion, or merely as a means to consolidate and increase his political power. Even though Canute was accepted as a Christian monarch after the conquest, the army he led to England was largely pagan, so there is every reason to believe that this area was not Roman Catholic Christian, even by 1016. St. Augustine of Canterbury came to the south coast of the UK in 597 AD, but he spent most of his years in the south, supporting King Aethelberht of Wessex. Kirkham Priory near York, for example, wasn't founded until the 1120s, 100 years after Canute's death and 500 years after St. Augustine's arrival. Also see our video, Sacred Geography, Kirkham Priory. The Byzantine Empire. But let us now roll back to the time when Islam captured the entire northern coast of Africa and Spain. The Holy Land had been lost, and every non-Muslim, whether black or white, risked enslavement of the most brutal kind. And the only part of Christendom left acting as a barrier between the march of Islam into Europe was the Byzantine Empire. This shows the empire in 867 AD, just after the end of Charlemagne's reign. Despite its key position, the Christians in Rome, with Charlemagne's help, had consolidated power. Furthermore, the Eastern Orthodox, Greek, and Western Roman Latin halves of the Church were in perpetual conflict. By 1025, the Byzantine Empire had managed to keep Turkey, save most of Greece, save Cyprus and Crete, save the Dalmatian coast and even southern Italy, but Sicily had been lost to the Muslims. The Byzantine Empire had apparently gained an ally when the Kievan Rus was said to have been converted to Orthodox Christianity around about 1000 AD. This map shows Kievan Rus territory after the death of Yaroslav I in 1054. But according to Greek historians, there was no need to convert them. Eusebius, in his Church History 3:1, quotes Origen as saying that the Apostle Andrew had already preached in Scythia. Furthermore, the Chronicle of Nestor adds that Andrew preached along the Black Sea and the Dnieper River as far as Kiev. Andrew is the patron saint of Ukraine, Romania, and Russia, and his statue is part of the monument to St. Olga in Kiev. According to Hippolytus of Rome, Andrew preached in Thrace, and his presence in Byzantium is mentioned in the apocryphal Acts of Andrew. And according to tradition, it was Andrew who founded the See of Byzantium, not Constantine, in AD 38. Andrew is said to have been martyred by crucifixion at the city of Patras, in Achaia, in AD 60, when he was bound, not nailed, to an X-shaped cross, or saltire, St. Andrew's cross. This picture shows the martyrdom of St. Andrew from the Nuremberg Chronicle. But this is why the Slavs and Russians regard themselves as the first Orthodox Christians. The Great Schism. The final break between the Greek Orthodox and Roman Catholic Church is said to have arisen after the capture and sacking of Constantinople by the Fourth Crusade in 1204. And yes, you have heard this correctly. The Fourth Crusade, 1202 to 1204, was a Latin Christian armed expedition called by Pope Innocent III, the same pope who led the Albigensian Crusade against the Christian Cathars in southern France and killed them all. The stated intent of the expedition was to recapture the Muslim-controlled city of Jerusalem. However, they sacked Constantinople, the capital of the Greek Christian-controlled Byzantine Empire, instead. The treachery sent shockwaves around Europe. This is Enrico Dandolo, a leader of the crusade. Citizens were raped and massacred. Buildings were torched, churches desecrated. Even during the reign of Pope John Paul II, 1978 to 2005, this appalling act was still being remembered. Pope John Paul II, to the Patriarch of Constantinople, the Crusaders' sack of Constantinople in 1204. Some memories are especially painful, and some events of the distant past have left deep wounds in the minds and hearts of people to this day. I am thinking of the disastrous sack of the imperial city of Constantinople, which was, for so long, the bastion of Christianity in the East. It is tragic that the assailants, who had set out to secure free access for Christians to the Holy Land, turned against their own brothers in the faith. The fact that they were Latin Christians fills Catholics with deep regret. The final break with Rome occurred around 1450. The Eastern Orthodox Church became and is now the primary religious denomination in Russia, Belarus, Bulgaria, Cyprus, Georgia, Moldova, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Romania, Serbia, Ukraine, and Greece. It is additionally responsible for governing the autonomous region of the monastic community of Mount Athos. Constantinople becomes Istanbul. Constantinople had been considered a faithful and stalwart bastion of Christianity that defended Europe from the advancing forces of Islam. The Fourth Crusade sack of the city dealt an irreparable blow to this eastern bulwark. The empire fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. Hagia Sophia, the Greek Orthodox Cathedral, or Church of Holy Wisdom, which had stood from 360 AD, became the Hagia Sophia Grand Mosque, and 4 minarets were erected. All signs of Christianity were removed. The Turks then proceeded to overrun Serbia, Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria, and Hungary, believing that if they could crack Vienna, the rest of Europe would easily fall into their hands. The Sultan Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa and his 140,000 troops surrounded Vienna and laid siege to the city. Jan Sobieski and the Scutum Constellation. The Constellation Scutum Sobieskianum, Sobieski's shield, commemorates Jan Sobieski, a king of Poland. Scutum is the only constellation that owes its name to a non-classical historical figure. It was created by Johannes Gehrts in 1684, and later the name was shortened to Scutum. Jan Sobieski was a brilliant military leader, celebrated throughout Europe for his role in repelling the Ottomans from the gates of Vienna in 1683. Polish manuscripts from Internet, the Modern History Sourcebook. The combined army of Sobieski moved forward in column, advanced into line and into the sunlight. Dazzling bright sunlight reflected off thousands of pieces of metal and jewelled accoutrements, the shields. And then Sobieski himself, with his personal banner, advanced to the front of his army. The Turks were thunderstruck, and Sobieski won. If he hadn't won, we would all have been Muslim, the slaves of Arabs, the concubines of wealthy men, all wearing burqas, serving at table and stoned when we did wrong. Perhaps this is why the Nordic people all use a stylized Christian cross in their flag. But this cross is not the Roman Catholic cross. It is based on Greek values and orthodoxy. Some possible consequences. This heinous betrayal by the Roman Catholic Church in 1200 had some far-reaching consequences. This is Thomas Cranmer, Archbishop of Canterbury, who led the Reformation. Henry VIII dissolved the monasteries. In the UK, between 1536 and 1541, in England, Wales and Ireland, he expropriated their income, disposed of their assets, and provided for their former personnel and functions. With those funds, he built a formidable navy. In 1588, the Spanish Armada, a Spanish fleet with orders to land in England and overthrow Elizabeth I, entered the Channel. Its purpose was to reinstate Roman Catholicism in England, and as we know, it failed. In the 1500s, Martin Luther began the Protestant Reformation. His refusal to renounce all of his writings at the demand of Pope Leo X in 1520 and the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V at the Diet of Worms in 1521 resulted in his excommunication by the Pope. Most of Northern Europe and Scandinavia are as a consequence Protestant. The Puritans were English Protestants in the 16th and 17th centuries who sought to purify the Church of England of Roman Catholic practices, and of course a group of them sailed to America. And what of the Nordic flag? Well, it may unite those whose virtues are commonly thought to be those of Protestants and the Orthodox Church rather than Roman Catholic. Mercy towards the poor and oppressed. Humility. Honesty and hard work. Honour and truth. Sacrifice and cooperation. Fear of God. Faithfulness. Courage.